Imagine you're standing on the deck of a destroyer. It's a beautiful morning in April 1945. The sun is rising over the Pacific Ocean. You're 80 miles from the nearest help. Then your radar lights up. 50 contacts, then 75, then over 100. And you realize they're all coming for you. For the next 80 minutes, you will face 22 Japanese kamikaze attacks. That's one suicide plane diving at you every 3.5 minutes. You watch them come screaming out of the sky. You fire every gun on your ship. And you pray that the next one isn't the one that kills you. This isn't a movie. This actually happened. April 16, 1945, USS Laffey. One destroyer, 330 men. Surrounded. Alone. Attacked by wave after wave of suicide bombers. They were hit by 6 bombs. 4 kamikaze planes crashed directly into them. 32 men died. 71 were wounded. The ship should have sunk 5 different times. But Captain Julian Becton, the commander, later wrote in his memoir, and I'm quoting him directly here, "We should have gone down. By every law of physics, every rule of naval engineering, Laffey should be at the bottom of the Pacific." But she didn't sink, because 330 American sailors looked death in the face and said, "Not today." The Navy called her the ship that would not die. This is the story of the most intense 80 minutes in naval history. This is the story of courage, desperation, and survival against impossible odds. This is the story of USS Laffey. April 16, 1945, 7:30 in the morning, 80 miles north of Okinawa. USS Laffey, a Fletcher-class destroyer, sits alone on the water. Her job, radar picket duty. She's stationed out here, isolated, exposed, to act as an early warning system for the main fleet. When Japanese planes come, Laffey sees them first. She's the sacrificial lamb, the bait, the target. Captain F. Julian Becton stands on the bridge holding a cup of coffee. At 37 years old, he's a veteran of multiple campaigns. He's brought Laffey through the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and now Okinawa. His crew trusts him completely. Years later, Becton wrote a memoir about this day. He called it "The Ship That Would Not Die." In it, he described this exact moment. He wrote, "The morning was almost too beautiful, too calm. I had a bad feeling. Intelligence had warned us the day before. A massive kamikaze raid was coming. Over 100 planes, and we were the northernmost picket ship. We'd be first." Reference: this comes from Becton's memoir, "The Ship That Would Not Die," published by Naval Institute Press in 1980. Page 1. Becton wrote this memoir in retirement 35 years after the battle, but he kept detailed notes and diary entries during the war. His radar officer's voice suddenly cuts through the morning calm over the intercom. "Captain, I've got multiple bogeys on the scope. Bearing 285. Range 50 miles. Count is..." "Sir, I'm showing over 50 contacts." "No, wait, 75. They're still coming in." Becton sets down his coffee. His hands are steady, but his voice has an edge. "Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations. This is it, gentlemen." The alarm bells explode through the ship. 330 men drop whatever they're doing and sprint to their positions. According to Lieutenant Frank Manson, Laffey's executive officer, who later gave testimony in the official Navy investigation, he asked Captain Becton, "Sir, should we request to withdraw to the main fleet?" Becton shook his head. "Our orders are to hold this position. We're the early warning. If we run, the main fleet doesn't get warned, and 100 kamikazes hit them by surprise. We hold." Reference: Manson's testimony is included in the official Laffey Action Report, filed April 20, 1945, stored at the National Archives in Record Group 38, 1647. This is the official after-action report written just 4 days after the battle. Down in the Combat Information Center, sailors watch the radar screen. The contacts keep multiplying, 80, 90, over 100 aircraft, all heading directly toward Laffey. One radar operator, Seaman Robert Dockery, who survived the battle and gave an interview 50 years later in 1995, said, "I've never forgotten that radar screen. It was just covered with contacts, like a swarm of bees, and we were the honey." Reference: Dockery interview conducted by Naval Institute Oral History Program, 1995, archived at Naval Historical Center. Becton picks up the radio. Combat Air Patrol, this is Laffey. We have mass raid inbound. Request immediate fighter support. The response crackles back. Laffey, we're scrambling fighters now. TA, your position. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. The Kamikazes will arrive in less than 10. Becton hangs up the radio and turns to his crew. Gentlemen, we're going to be on our own for a while. Make every shot count. Laffey has 20 guns, 5 5-inch guns, 14 40mm guns, and 11 20mm cannons. Against over 100 kamikazes, it won't be enough. It can't possibly be enough, but they're going to try anyway. Before we go into the battle itself, you need to understand what Laffey was facing. You need to understand the kamikaze. By April 1945, Japan was losing the war. Everyone knew it. American forces were 340 miles from mainland Japan. The invasion was coming. Japan's navy was destroyed. Its air force was running out of planes and fuel. Conventional tactics weren't working anymore. So Japan turned to desperation. They created the kamikaze, the divine wind. The idea was simple and horrifying. Pack a plane full of explosives. Get a pilot to fly it directly into an American ship. The pilot dies, but the ship sinks. One plane, one ship. Rikihei Inaguchi was a Japanese Navy staff officer who actually helped organize the kamikaze program. After the war, he wrote a book called The Divine Wind, published in 1958. In it, he explained the logic, as terrible as it was. He wrote, and I'm quoting directly, "We knew we could not win through conventional warfare. American production was too great. But if every plane could sink a ship, if every pilot was willing to give his life, we calculated we could destroy enough American vessels to make invasion impossible. The mathematics of desperation." Reference, Inaguchi, Rikihei, and Nakajima, Tadashi. The Divine Wind, Japan's kamikaze force in World War II. Naval Institute Press, 1958, page 167. This book was written by actual kamikaze corps officers and provides the Japanese perspective. Between April and June 1945, Japan launched 10 massive kamikaze operations against American ships at Okinawa. They called these operations Kikusui, Chrysanthemum Water. Over 1,400 pilots flew to their deaths. According to Dennis and Peggy Warner, historians who wrote The Sacred Warriors in 1982, after interviewing dozens of survivors, the psychological effect on American sailors was devastating. One sailor they interviewed said, "You can fight an enemy who's trying to survive. But how do you fight someone who wants to die? Who's happy to die as long as he takes you with him? It got in your head. Every plane you saw, you wondered, is that one coming for me?" Reference Warner, Dennis, and Peggy. The Sacred Warriors, Japan's Suicide Legions. Van Nostrand Reinhold. 1982, page 248. This book includes extensive interviews with both American and Japanese veterans. And American radar Picket destroyers, ships like Laffey, bore the absolute worst of these attacks. Here's how radar Picket duty worked, and why it was essentially a death sentence. Destroyers were stationed 50 to 75 miles from the main fleet, forming a ring around Okinawa. When Japanese planes came, these destroyers detected them first on radar and radioed warnings to the main fleet. They'd also try to vector fighter planes to intercept the kamikazes. But here's the problem. The kamikazes saw these destroyers first too. Alone, isolated, easy targets. Samuel Eliot Morison, the official U.S. Navy historian who wrote the Comprehensive History of Naval Operations in World War II, published in 1960, described radar picket duty with brutal honesty. He wrote, "Assignment to radar picket duty was dreaded by every destroyer crew in the Pacific. The ships were deliberately positioned to be attacked first. They were sacrificial, placed there to absorb kamikaze attacks that would otherwise hit the main fleet. Between April 6th and June 22, 1945, 15 destroyers on radar picket duty were sunk. 45 more were heavily damaged. Over 1,300 sailors died." Reference, Morison, Samuel Eliot, Victory in the Pacific. 1945, History of United States Naval Operations in World War II. Volume 14, Naval Institute Press, 1960, page 223. Morrison was the official Navy historian with access to all records. Sailors started calling radar picket duty the coffin corner. Laffey was assigned to radar picket station number 1, the northernmost station, closest to Japanese airfields on Kyushu. The most dangerous position of all, Captain Becton knew exactly what they were facing. The day before the battle, April 15th, he gathered his officers for a briefing. His gunnery officer, Lieutenant Bill Youngquist, later told an interviewer in 1984 what Becton said. Youngquist recalled, "The captain looked at each of us and said, 'Intelligence reports say a massive raid is coming tomorrow. Possibly over 100 kamikazes. We're the furthest north. We'll get hit first and probably hardest. Some of you won't survive tomorrow. I won't lie about that. But we're going to fight like hell. And we're going to save as many of you as I possibly can. Get your men ready.'" Reference Youngquist interview. Naval Institute Oral History Program 1984, archived at Naval Historical Center. Youngquist was Laffey's damage control officer and survived the battle. Nobody slept well that night, and at 7:30 a.m. on April 16th, when that radar operator reported over 100 contacts inbound, every man on Laffey knew this was it. The battle they'd been dreading was here. 8:27 a.m. The first kamikaze appears, a Mitsubishi Zero approaching from the north at 6,000 feet. The lookouts spot it first. Bogey, bearing 350, range 4,000 yards. Laffey's 5-inch guns swing around and open fire. Boom, boom, boom. The big guns shake the entire ship. Giant shells streak toward the Zero, exploding in black puffs around the aircraft. The Zero doesn't turn away. Noses over into a dive, straight at Laffey. Now the 40mm quad-mount guns join in, 4 barrels per gun pumping out rounds. Then the 20mm cannons start firing. The ship becomes a hurricane of lead and steel, every gun firing at once. According to the official action report filed by Captain Becton 4 days later, Laffey fired over 100 rounds of 5-inch shells, 4,000 rounds of 40mm, and 28,000 rounds of 20mm ammunition during the entire battle. That's more than 33,000 rounds total. Reference Laffey Action Report. April 16, 1945. Ammunition Expenditure Log. Page 8. National Archives RG-38 Box 1647. The Zero breaks apart at 1,000 yards. Pieces rain into the ocean. The first kill. But there's no time to celebrate. Seaman Fred Gemmell, manning gun Mount 44, later told an interviewer, "We cheered for maybe 2 seconds. Then someone yelled another one, and we were already turning the guns. They just kept coming." Reference Gemmell interview conducted by Naval Institute. 8:30 a.m. The second kamikaze, a Val dive bomber, approaches from the port side. Laffey's guns swing left. Every barrel fires at this new threat. The Val takes hits. You can see pieces flying off its wings, but it keeps coming. It crashes into the ocean 50 yards from Laffey's hull. The impact throws up a massive wave of water that washes over the deck, soaking the gun crews. Captain Becton, standing on the open bridge wing, doesn't even flinch. His executive officer, Lieutenant Manson, later testified that Becton refused to go inside the armored bridge. He said, "The captain told me he needed to see everything so he could make instant decisions. He stood out there, completely exposed for the entire battle. Never took cover once." Reference Manson Testimony in Action Report. Page 4, 8:35 a.m. 3 kamikazes attack simultaneously from 3 different directions, a coordinated assault. This is the nightmare scenario. Laffey's guns can't track 3 targets at once. The gunners are swiveling frantically, firing at whichever target is closest. The first Zero explodes at 2,000 yards direct, hit from a 5-inch shell. The second Val crashes into the sea 200 yards out. The third Zero breaks through the defensive fire. Seaman Fred Gemmell, on his 20mm cannon, keeps firing even as the Zero comes straight at him. He later said, "I could see the pilot's face. He was young, maybe 20. He was smiling. Actually smiling, and I thought, this kid is about to kill me. And he's happy about it." Reference Gemmell interview, same source as above, describing his personal encounter. Gemmell's tracers chew into the Zero's engine. Black smoke pours out, but the Zero doesn't veer off. It slams into Laffey's stern right at the waterline. Boom! The explosion tears a 10-foot hole in the hull. Water floods into the aft engine room. Men are thrown off their feet by the blast. Shrapnel tears through metal and flesh. Damage report. Becton shouts. The damage control officer's voice comes back over the intercom. Captain, we're flooding aft. Aft engine room taking on water fast. In his memoir, Becton described this moment. He wrote, I felt the ship shudder from the impact. My first thought was, this is how it starts. This is how ships sink. One hit leads to flooding. Flooding leads to list. List makes the ship harder to maneuver, which makes you easier to hit. It's a death spiral. Reference Becton, The Ship That Would Not Die, page 97. But the damage control teams are already responding. Lieutenant Youngquist leads teams into the flooding compartment. They're closing watertight doors, shoring up bulkheads with wooden beams, working pumps at maximum capacity. Youngquist later described the scene. The water was already knee-deep and rising. The bulkhead was buckling from the pressure. I had guys working in waist-deep water, in darkness, knowing the whole compartment could flood and trap them at any second. Nobody hesitated. They just worked. Reference. Youngquist interview, 1984, describing damage control efforts. Up on deck, the gun crews barely notice. They're still firing, because more kamikazes are coming. 8:42 a.m. A Val dive bomber releases its 550-pound bomb from 3,000 feet. The lookouts see it. Incoming bomb. The bomb falls tumbling through the air. There's nothing anyone can do. You can't shoot down a bomb. You can only watch it come and hope it misses. It doesn't miss. The bomb slams into the fan tail, the rear deck, and explodes. The blast tears a 20-foot crater in the deck. 4 men are killed instantly, just vaporized by the explosion. 7 more are wounded by shrapnel. Metal fragments tear through everything in a 30-yard radius. Reference. U.S. Navy Bureau of Medicine Casualty List, April 16, 1945. Lists names of all personnel killed and wounded, including time and location of injuries. Fire erupts from the hole. Ammunition stored nearby starts cooking off, exploding from the heat. Pop, 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 pop like firecrackers. But each one is a 40mm shell that could kill someone. The firefighting teams charge in with hoses, spraying foam, trying to reach the ammunition before it all explodes and blows the stern off the ship. Pharmacist's mate, William Dockery, runs toward the wounded. Years later, in his final interview before he died in 2019, Dockery described what he saw. He said, I ran aft and there were just pieces. That's all I can say, pieces. Some of the men I couldn't even tell who they were, but I had to try. I had to see if anyone could be saved. Reference Dockery final interview, conducted by Patriots Point Museum, March 2019, 3 months before his death. He was the last living survivor of Laffey's battle. 3 men are pulled from the wreckage. 1 will die of his wounds later. 2 will survive, but the battle isn't stopping. It's not even slowing down. 8:45 a.m. Another kamikaze hits. This Zero crashes into the port side at the waterline. The Zero's engine, 900 pounds of steel, punches through the hull like a bullet through paper. Aviation fuel from the Zero's tanks spills onto the water and ignites. The ocean around Laffey is on fire. Fire on the water, port side. The damage control teams pivot from fighting internal fires to spraying foam on the burning ocean. If that fire spreads to the ship's fuel bunkers, Laffey will explode like a bomb. Captain Becton, still standing on the bridge wing, calmly orders, engine ahead full. Get us away from that burning fuel. The ship accelerates, pulling away from the flames. But the port side is now flooding. Water rushes into 3 compartments. Below decks, Chief Engineer Lieutenant Harris is coordinating the battle against flooding. He's racing from compartment to compartment, directing pump crews, ordering emergency repairs. In Becton's memoir, he specifically praises Harris. He wrote, "If we survived, it was because of Harris and his engineering crew. They kept the pumps running. They kept the engine functioning despite damage. They kept us afloat when we should have sunk. Harris deserved a medal for that day." Reference Becton memoir. Page 106, 8:49 a.m., a near-miss bomb. A Val bomber drops its bomb, which explodes in the ocean just 20 feet from Laffey's hull. A near miss sounds like you dodged a bullet. At 20 feet, it's almost as bad as a direct hit. The underwater explosion creates a massive shock wave that hammers Laffey's hull like a giant's fist. Rivets pop, seams crack. Hull plates buckle. More flooding begins. The engineering assessment report filed later noted, near-miss explosion at Aero 849 caused structural damage equivalent to moderate impact torpedo hit. Multiple hull fractures. Emergency pumping required. Reference Navy Yard Repair Assessment, May 1945, page 3. National Archives. Laffey is now flooding in 6 different compartments. She's been in combat for 22 minutes. She's been hit by 2 kamikazes, 1 bomb, and 1 near miss. And the first wave isn't even over yet. 8:53 a.m. 3 more kamikazes appear on the horizon simultaneously. The radar operator's voice is starting to crack from stress. Multiple bogeys. Bearing 090, 180, and 270. They're coming from 3 sides. The gun crews are exhausted. They've been firing continuously for 25 minutes. Their shoulders ache from the recoil. Their ears are ringing so loud they can barely hear commands. Shell casings are piled ankle-deep around the gun positions, but they keep loading. They keep firing. Gunner's mate 3rd Class Lawrence Delowski, manning one of the 40mm guns, later gave testimony about this moment. He said, "My arms felt like rubber. I could barely lift the next ammo clip." But you don't think about being tired. You think about the guy next to you. You think about keeping the ship afloat. You just keep going. Reference, Delowski testimony included in Action Report Appendix, page 23. First kamikaze, splashed at 800 yards. The 5-inch guns caught it perfectly. Second kamikaze, explodes mid-dive. The 40mm guns literally tore it apart in the air. Third kamikaze. This one gets through. It's another Val dive bomber. Comes in low and fast, hugging the wave tops to avoid radar detection. By the time the lookouts spot it, it's less than 500 yards away. Every gun on the starboard side swings toward it. The air fills with tracers. Looks like solid streams of light. But the Val keeps coming, weaving through the fire. Captain Becton sees it coming. According to his memoir, time seemed to slow down. He wrote, "I could see every detail. The rising sun painted on its fuselage. The bomb slung under the belly. The pilot's leather flight cap. I thought, this is it. This is the one that kills us." Reference, Becton Memoir, page 109, describing the slow-motion perception of the attack. The Val slams into the deckhouse, the superstructure where the bridge and command center are located. Boom. The explosion is massive. The entire deckhouse shudders. The forward mast collapses, crashing down onto the deck. Radar equipment explodes in showers of sparks. Radio antennas are torn away. Fire erupts across the entire superstructure. Captain Becton is thrown backwards by the blast. His executive officer, Lieutenant Frank Manson, who was standing right next to him, is killed instantly by shrapnel that tears through his chest. In the official casualty report, Manson is listed as Lieutenant Frank Manson. Killed in action, Aero 855 hours, shrapnel wound to thorax, died instantly. Reference, Bureau of Medicine Casualty Report, page 2. Becton picks himself up. He's bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he's alive. He looks at Manson's body and later wrote, "Frank had been with me since the beginning. He was a good officer, a good man. He died doing his duty. I didn't even have time to close his eyes. I had to keep commanding the ship." Reference, Becton Memoir, page 110. The fire on the bridge is spreading fast. Men are beating at flames with blankets, spraying extinguishers, anything to keep the fire from reaching the ammunition stores below. Seaman James Townsley runs into the burning deckhouse to drag out wounded men. He makes 3 trips into the flames, pulling out 3 sailors who can't walk. On his 3rd trip, part of the ceiling collapses on him. He's badly burned, but survives. Townsley received the Navy Cross for this action. His citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism and utter disregard for his own safety, while rescuing wounded shipmates from burning compartments." Reference, Navy Cross citation, Seaman James Townsley, awarded July 1945, 9:04 a.m. Another bomb hits this One strikes the forward gun mount. Mount 51, the 550-pound bomb explodes on direct impact. Gun mount 51 is simply as gone, obliterated. The entire mount, gun, shield, crew just disappears in the blast. 11 men die in that instant. The bomb leaves a crater where the gun mount used to be. Reference: Casualty report lists all 11 names. Gunner's mate 2nd Class Robert Johnson, Seaman 1st Class Michael O'Brien, and 9 others. A sailor on the deck, Seaman George Loftus, witnessed it from 50 yards away. In an interview decades later, he could barely talk about it. He said, "1 second they were there. 11 guys I'd eaten breakfast with that morning. 1 second they're there, loading shells, firing. Next second, just smoke in a hole. I couldn't even process it. I just turned back to my gun and kept firing." Reference: Loftus interview, Veterans History Project, 2003, 9:12 a.m. The worst hit yet. A Zero Kamikaze crashes into the aft gun mount, Mount 52. The explosion detonates the ready ammunition stored next to the gun. Dozens of 5-inch shells explode in a massive secondary blast that tears apart the entire stern section. 16 men die in this explosion. 16 more are wounded. Reference: Casualty report, 0912 hours, Mount 52 destruction. The stern, the entire back third of the ship, is now a burning wreck. The deck is gone. The gun mounts are twisted metal. Bodies lie everywhere. Pharmacist's mate Dockery runs aft again. He later said, "I couldn't save them. There were too many. I did what I could. I gave morphine to the ones who were still conscious. I tried to stop bleeding, but some wounds you can't fix. Not out there. Not with what I had." Reference: Dockery final interview 2019 describing medical efforts. Captain Becton looks aft from the bridge. His ship is dying. The stern is underwater. Multiple fires are raging. 32 men are dead. 71 wounded. They've been hit by 4 kamikazes and 3 bombs. His junior officer of the deck, Ensign Youngblood, says quietly, "Sir, the ship can't take much more. Maybe we should prepare to abandon." Becton cuts him off. According to Youngblood's testimony later, Becton's voice was firm but not angry. He said, "We are not abandoning ship. Do you understand me? We're going to fight this ship until she sinks or they stop coming. Pass the word to all stations. We fight until we win or until we're at the bottom. No surrender. No retreat." Reference: Youngblood testimony, action report appendix. And at that moment, at the worst possible moment, salvation arrived. 9:07 a.m. 8. F-4U Corsair fighters from Marine Fighter Squadron, VMF 441, came screaming out of the sky at 400 miles per hour. They were led by First Lieutenant Arthur White. White had been monitoring Laffey's radio transmissions from 50 miles away. He could hear the desperation in the voices. He could hear the explosions in the background. He knew that destroyer was dying. According to the Marine Corps Historical Center's records, White's Squadron War Diary entry for April 16th reads, "Heard DD in distress on Picket Station. Heavy kamikaze attack in progress. Proceeded at maximum speed to assist." Reference: Marine Fighter Squadron VMF 441 War Diary, April 16th, 1945, entry 0907 hours. Marine Corps Historical Center Archives, Quantico, Virginia. White later gave an interview in 1946, right after the war ended, while everything was still fresh in his mind. He said, "We could see the smoke from 30 miles away. When we got closer, we could see this one destroyer all alone, surrounded by Japanese planes. She was on fire. She was listing, and she was still shooting. Every gun that still worked was firing. I radioed my guys. That destroyer down there is fighting for her life. Let's go save her." Reference: White Arthur. Post-combat interview conducted by Marine Corps combat correspondents, April 17th, 1945, one day after the battle, archived at Marine Corps Historical Center. The 8 Corsairs dove into the swarm of kamikazes like wolves attacking sheep. Lieutenant White locked onto a Zero that was lining up for a dive on Laffey. The Zero pilot probably never even saw the Corsair coming. White's 6 50 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing, opened fire. The sustained burst lasted maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds of 6 guns pumping out rounds. The Zero's tail section disintegrated. The plane flipped, went into an uncontrolled spin, and exploded when it hit the water. White didn't watch it crash. He was already turning toward the next target. According to his official kill tally that day, he shot down 4 Japanese aircraft in 30 minutes. Reference: VMF 441 War Diary, confirmed kill list. White credited with 4 confirmed, 1 probable. Another Corsair pilot, 2nd Lieutenant Brad Cutrell, spotted 2 Val dive bombers approaching Laffey from opposite sides. A coordinated attack. He had to make a choice, which one to engage. He didn't choose. He engaged both. Cutrell later described this in a 1983 interview for a military history magazine. He said, "I came in high on the first Val, fired a burst, and saw him start smoking. Then I rolled hard left and dove on the second Val. My gunnery instructor back in flight school would have killed me for that maneuver. You're not supposed to split your attention. But that destroyer needed both those Vals gone, so I made it work." Reference: Cutrell interview, Leatherneck magazine, May 1983. Page 34. Cutrell discussing his combat experiences. The first Val exploded. The second crashed into the ocean 100 yards from Laffey. Close enough that the splash soaked the deck, but didn't damage the ship. Down on Laffey, the crew watched these Corsairs like they were angels. Seaman Robert Dockery later said, "We'd been fighting alone for almost 40 minutes. Nobody was coming to help us. We thought we were going to die out there. Then those Marines showed up and just started tearing into the Japs. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Reference: Dockery final interview, 2019. For 30 minutes, the Corsairs and Laffey fought together. The Corsairs would shoot down kamikazes before they could dive. The ones that got through had to face Laffey's guns. According to VMF 441's official records, they shot down 9 confirmed kamikazes and damaged several more. Combined with Laffey's guns accounting for 7 more, they were destroying kamikazes faster than they could attack. Reference: VMF 441 War Diary. Confirmed kill tally and damage assessment. April 6, 1945, 1 Corsair pilot, after shooting down a kamikaze that was diving on Laffey, flew directly over the destroyer at mast height, maybe 50 feet above the deck. It was a victory roll, a salute, a message. "We got your back," Captain Becton saw it. He later wrote in his memoir, "That Marine pilot flew so close I could see his face in the cockpit. He was grinning. He waggled his wings and then climbed back up to altitude to look for more targets. In that moment, I knew we were going to survive. We had help. We weren't alone anymore." Reference: Becton Memoir, page 115. But even with the Marines' help, kamikazes were still getting through. And Laffey was running out of guns. 9:31 a.m., bomb number 6 hits. A Val dive bomber, pursued by 2 Corsairs, releases its bomb in desperation before the Corsairs can shoot it down. The bomb falls tumbling through the air. It strikes Laffey's port side amidships. The explosion tears a massive hole in the hull. More flooding. The port list increases to 15 degrees. 15-degree list and increasing. The ship is tilting visibly now. Men on deck have to hold onto railings to keep from sliding. Below decks, the damage control teams are performing what's called counter-flooding, deliberately flooding compartments on the opposite side of the ship to balance it out. It's a desperate measure. You're intentionally sinking parts of your own ship to keep the whole ship from capsizing. Lieutenant Youngquist, coordinating damage control, makes the call. Years later, he explained, "We were listing so far to port I thought we'd capsize. So I ordered flooding of starboard compartments 5 and 6. It brought us back to about 8 degrees. Still bad, but survivable. It also meant we were now sitting lower in the water, which made us an easier target." Reference: Youngquist interview, Genie 84, explaining counter-flooding decision. 9:35 a.m., the final kamikaze attack, 3 Zeros. Flying in tight formation, dive on Laffey from 3 different directions simultaneously. It's a coordinated attack. The pilots are communicating, timing their dives to hit at the same instant. Laffey has exactly 4 guns still operational. 4 guns out of her original 20. Most have been destroyed. Others are jammed or out of ammunition. But those 4 guns fire. Gun mount 42, a 40mm, quad mount commanded by gunner's mate First Class Frank. Varga tracks the first Zero. Varga's gun crew has been firing for over an hour. They're exhausted, wounded, covered in soot and blood. But they load another clip. Varga later described this moment in testimony. He said, "I could see that Zero coming right at us. I put the crosshairs on his nose and squeezed the trigger. All 4 barrels fired. The Zero just came apart in the air. 1 second it was a plane. Next second it was pieces falling into the ocean." Reference Varga testimony. Action Report Appendix, page 19. The second Zero is engaged by one of the 5-inch guns. The shell detonates right next to the Zero's cockpit. The pilot is killed instantly. The Zero flips and crashes into the sea 200 yards from Laffey. The third Zero gets through. It's diving from directly astern, coming from behind where Laffey's remaining guns can't track effectively. Every sailor on deck watches it come. There's nothing they can do. The Zero crashes into the already destroyed stern section, the section that's already underwater. There's nothing left to destroy there. The Zero's impact barely registers, just another explosion in wreckage. Captain Becton, watching this, later wrote, "That kamikaze pilot gave his life to hit a piece of our ship that was already destroyed. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost." Reference, Becton Memoir, page 127. 9:42 a.m. For the first time in 80 minutes, the sky is empty. The radar scope shows no contacts. The Marine Corsairs are circling overhead, looking for more targets, but there are none. The kamikaze raid is over. Laffey has survived. Captain Becton stands on what's left of his bridge and looks around his ship. The stern is underwater. Multiple fires are still burning, though the crews are getting them under control. Bodies lie on the deck covered with blankets. Wounded men are being treated by medics. Every gun mount shows damage, bent barrels, twisted metal, destroyed equipment. All stations. Report status. One by one, the reports come in over the sound-powered phones. The electrical systems are damaged, so they're using manual communication systems. Mount 41, destroyed. Mount 42, operational, but only 2 barrels working. Mount 51, destroyed. Total loss. Mount 52, destroyed. Total loss. Aft engine room, flooding contained but engine offline. It goes on like that. Every station has damage, but the keyword keeps appearing, contained. The flooding is contained. The fires are contained. The ship is damaged, but she's stable. Ensign John Michel, the assistant gunnery officer, approaches Captain Becton. Michel later recalled this conversation in an interview. He said, "I walked up to the captain and said, 'Sir, ammunition status. We're down to 17 rounds of 5-inch, maybe 200 rounds of 40 millimeter, and less than 1,000 rounds of 20 millimeter. If they come back, we can't fight them off.' Becton looked at him and said, 'Then we'll throw wrenches at them.'" Reference, Michel interview. Conducted by Naval Institute, 1987. But they don't come back. The kamikazes are gone. The Marines have chased off the survivors. At 9:55 a.m., 2 tugboats arrive. They're going to tow Laffey back to the anchorage for emergency repairs. The journey takes 8 hours. 8 hours of Laffey's crew continuously fighting fires, pumping water, treating wounded, and just trying to keep the ship afloat. At one point during the tow, the stern settles even lower. Water rises to dangerous levels. Captain Becton orders non-essential personnel to move forward, using their body weight to try to lift the stern. Seaman George Logan later described this. He said, 300 guys standing in the bow of the ship trying to use our weight to balance it out. It was absurd, but it worked. We stayed afloat. Reference Logan interview, Veterans History Project, WW2. At 6:15 p.m., almost 11 hours after the battle began, Laffey drops anchor at the Karama-Redo anchorage. Captain Becton gets on the ship's public address system. His voice is hoarse from shouting orders all day. Many crew members later said this was the only time they ever heard emotion in his voice. He said, and multiple crew members recorded his exact words. Men of Laffey. This morning we faced 22 kamikaze attacks. We were hit by 6 bombs and 4 suicide planes. We lost 32 of our shipmates, 32 good men who died doing their duty. Reference. Multiple crew testimonies recorded the speech. Compiled in Rieli, Kamikazes, Corsairs, and Picket ships. Page 169, Becton paused. The ship was silent except for the sound of water pumps and small fires still being extinguished. But we did not sink. We did not surrender. Every man on this ship fought like hell today. You saved your shipmates. You saved your ship. And I am proud to have commanded you. His voice broke slightly on the last sentence. The Navy is calling us the ship that would not die. But I'll tell you what we really are. We're survivors. We're warriors. And we're the best damn destroyer crew in the United States Navy. The crew, exhausted, wounded, covered in soot and blood, cheered. It wasn't a loud cheer. They were too tired for that. But every man who could stand did. Every man who could raise his hand did. Reference Becton Memoir, page 134, recounting his address to the crew. 32 men didn't hear that speech. They were already gone. Read slowly, respectfully, showing names on screen as you read Lieutenant Frank Manson, Gunner's Mate Robert Johnson, Seaman Michael O'Brien, Seaman First Class Thomas Bradley. Continue with several names. Reference. Official Casualty List, Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, complete list of 32 KIA. These men gave their lives so that 298 others could survive. They died at their posts, manning guns, fighting fires, helping wounded shipmates. Later that evening, the Chief of Naval Operations, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, sent a message to Laffey. It read, "The courage and determination displayed by the officers and men of USS Laffey in action against overwhelming enemy air attack reflects the highest credit upon themselves and the United States Naval Service." Well done. Reference Nimitz message April 16, 1945, 21:30 hours. Recorded in Laffey's deck log and ship's history. Naval architects and engineers came aboard the next day to assess the damage. They were stunned. The chief engineer from the Navy Yard wrote in his report, USS Laffey sustained damage that, by all conventional engineering calculations, should have resulted in the ship's loss. The extent of flooding, combined with structural damage and loss of buoyancy, exceeds survivability parameters. That this vessel remained afloat can only be attributed to exceptional damage control procedures and, candidly, factors beyond engineering explanation. Reference Navy Yard Okinawa. Damage Assessment Report, USS Laffey DD 724, April 18, 1945, page 1, National Archives. In other words, Laffey should have sunk. By every rule of physics and naval architecture, she should be at the bottom of the Pacific, but she wasn't. USS Laffey was towed to a repair facility. It took 3 months to repair her enough to sail back to the United States. She arrived at Seattle in September 1945. The war was over by then. Captain Becton received the Navy Cross, the Navy's second highest decoration for valor. His citation specifically noted his extraordinary heroism, inspiring leadership, and tenacious determination during action against overwhelming enemy forces. Reference. Navy Cross citation, Commander F. Julian Becton, awarded August 1945, 18. Crew members received Silver Stars, 43, received Bronze Stars. Every single member of Laffey's crew received the Presidential Unit Citation, the highest unit award possible. Reference Award Summary, USS Laffey Crew, compiled 1945-1946 by Bureau of Personnel. But the recognition didn't ease the pain of loss. Captain Becton attended every funeral he could for the men who died. He wrote personal letters to every family. In his memoir, he said, "I commanded those men. I gave the orders that put them in harm's way. Yes, we won. Yes, we survived. But 32 men who trusted me didn't come home. That stays with you forever." Reference. Becton Memoir, page 142. Laffey returned to service. She served through the Korean War and remained in the Navy until 1975, 30 years of service. Reference. Naval Historical Center. USS Laffey, DD 724, service record, and decommissioning documentation. Today, USS Laffey is preserved as a museum ship at Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. You can walk her decks. You can see the damage that was never fully repaired, kept deliberately as a reminder of that April day. Reference. Patriots Point, Naval and Maritime. Museum official documentation. The names of the 32 men who died are engraved on a bronze memorial plaque on the ship's deck. Every April 16th, survivors, their families, and veterans gather at Laffey for a memorial service. The last survivor, Seaman Robert Dockery, attended every year until he died in 2019 at age 94. Before he passed, he gave one final interview. He said, "People ask me, how did you survive? How did Laffey survive? I tell them, we survived because we refused to give up." Captain Becton refused. Every gun crew refused. Every damage control team refused. We looked at those kamikazes coming and we said, "You're going to have to try harder than that." And they did try harder, and we still survived. Reference, Dockery final interview, Patriots Point Museum, March 2019. He paused and his eyes filled with tears. But 32 guys didn't survive. 32 guys who fought just as hard as I did. I survived because I was lucky. They didn't. So when people thank me for my service, I tell them, don't thank me. Thank the guys who didn't come home. The Battle of USS Laffey on April 16, 1945, stands as the most intense anti-aircraft action by a single ship in United States naval history. 22 kamikaze attacks, 80 minutes. 4 direct kamikaze hits, 6 bomb hits, 32 dead, 71 wounded, and 1 destroyer that refused to sink. The ship that would not die, that's what they called her. That's what she earned. But USS Laffey survived because of the men who served on her. Men who stood at their guns while suicide planes dove at them. Men who ran into burning compartments to save their shipmates. Men who fought fires, pumped water, and never gave up even when survival seemed impossible. Captain Becton, the gun crews, the damage control teams, the medics, the engineers, 330 men who faced the worst the enemy could throw at them and said, "Not today." 32 of those men gave everything. They died so 298 others could live. They died defending their ship, their country, and each other. Their names are carved in bronze on Laffey's deck. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten, and their ship, the ship they saved, still floats today in Charleston Harbor, a testament to courage, determination, and the unbreakable spirit of American sailors who simply refused to die. USS Laffey, DD-724, the ship that would not die. This has been their story.